The detention facility on Varick Station smelled like fear and disinfectant. Captain Korvac pressed his scaled snout against the reinforced transparent steel, watching the human cadet through narrowed amber eyes. The boy couldn't be more than 19 standard cycles, all sharp angles and defiant jawline, sitting cross-legged on the cold metal floor like he owned the place. "Tell me again why we are keeping this one alive," Korvac muttered to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Thresh. The Valdorian's mandibles clicked with irritation as he adjusted his grip on his plasma rifle. "Orders from High Command. Sir, they want to study human combat psychology. Apparently, this one killed 3 of our shock troopers during the raid on Kepler Colony." Thresh's voice carried that peculiar whistling quality common to his species, like air escaping through broken pipes. Korvac snorted, a sound that came out as more of a hiss through his reptilian vocal cords. 3 Valdorian shock troopers, killed by a trainee who probably hasn't even finished his military academy coursework. High Command thinks there's something special about human warfare tactics. Inside the cell, Cadet Marcus Rivera looked up at them through the observation window. Even through the supposedly one-way glass, the human seemed to know exactly where they were standing. His dark eyes held no fear, only a calculating coldness that made Korvac's scales ripple with unease. "Sir, we have got incoming transmission from the research vessel Dominion's Edge," came a voice from the communication console behind them. Ensign Krex, barely old enough to have molted his juvenile carapace, turned to face his superiors with all 4 of his insectoid eyes blinking rapidly. "Put it through," Korvac ordered, not taking his gaze off the human prisoner. The holographic projector flickered to life, casting the blue-tinted image of Director Yeshmore into the observation chamber. The elderly Hegemony scientist's tentacled face writhed with what Korvac had learned to recognize as excitement. "Captain Korvac, excellent timing. We are prepared to begin the psychological evaluation of your human specimen. My research team has developed several innovative approaches to breaking down human mental defenses." Rivera's head tilted slightly, and Korvac could swear the boy was listening to their conversation despite the soundproofed walls. "With respect, Director, I'm not convinced this is worth the resources we are expending," Korvac replied, his tone carefully neutral. "The human resistance is scattered. We have broken their main fleet. Why waste time studying one cadet when we could be hunting down the remaining rebel cells?" Yeshmore's tentacles writhed faster, a sign of growing agitation. "Because, Captain, this particular human survived a direct assault on a fortified position while outnumbered 12 to 1. He improvised explosive devices from basic maintenance supplies and turned our own energy weapons against us. The tactical reports suggest he demonstrated combat instincts that border on precognitive. Where he got lucky," Thresh interjected. "Luck doesn't account for the precision of his kills or the systematic way he disabled our equipment. No, Lieutenant, this human represents something we haven't encountered before. If we can understand how their minds work under extreme stress, we could develop countermeasures for future engagements." Korvac finally turned away from the observation window, his massive frame casting shadows across the dimly lit chamber. "Very well, Director, but I want this facility locked down tight during your experiments. Humans have a disturbing tendency to escape when you least expect it. Of course, Captain, we will begin with standard psychological profiling, then move to more intensive techniques if necessary." The transmission ended, leaving the 3 officers alone with their thoughts and the silent human in the cell below. "Sir," Krex spoke up hesitantly, "there's something else. We have been monitoring communications from a human refugee ships in the outer system. There's chatter about a rescue operation." Korvac's laugh came out as a harsh bark. "Let them come. This station has enough firepower to vaporize a small fleet. Besides, what are they going to do? The human military is finished. These are just desperate survivors clinging to false hope." Inside the detention cell, Marcus Rivera stood up and began pacing. His movements were controlled, measured, like a predator testing the boundaries of its cage. Every few steps, he would pause and examine different sections of the wall, running his fingers along the metal seams with the focused attention of someone looking for weaknesses. He's been doing that for hours, Fresh observed, mapping the cell structure. Let him, Korvac replied. That cell was designed to hold beings with 3 times human strength. The walls are meter-thick durasteel reinforced with quantum-locked molecular bonds. Even if he found a weakness, he'd need industrial cutting equipment to exploit it. What they couldn't see was Rivera methodically cataloging every imperfection, every maintenance access point, every tiny variation in the metal composition. His academy training hadn't just covered weapons and tactics. It had included engineering, chemistry, and most importantly, creative problem-solving under impossible circumstances. The human educational system, Korvac had learned from intelligence reports, was peculiarly focused on teaching their young to think outside conventional parameters. Where Valdorian military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and rigid command structures, humans seemed to thrive on improvisation and asymmetric warfare. Contact from the research team, sir, Krex announced. They are requesting permission to begin the first phase of psychological evaluation. Granted, but maintain full security protocols. I want guards stationed at every access point and continuous biometric monitoring of the prisoner. The next few hours passed quietly. Rivera continued his systematic examination of the cell, while Korvac reviewed tactical reports from other sectors. The human resistance was indeed scattered, but their hit-and-run attacks were becoming increasingly sophisticated. Small teams of survivors were managing to disable Hegemony, supply convoys, and communication arrays with disturbing regularity. Sir, Director Yeshmore is requesting your presence in Laboratory 7, Krex reported. Korvac made his way through the station's sterile corridors, past busy technicians and armed guards. The Hegemony had converted Varick Station from a mining platform into a research facility specifically for studying captured humans. The transformation had taken months, but the result was a perfect containment system designed around human physiology and psychology. Laboratory 7 was a circular chamber filled with monitoring equipment and analysis computers. Director Yeshmore floated in a specialized mobility harness, his tentacles dancing over multiple control interfaces simultaneously. Ah, Captain, perfect timing. We have just completed the initial psychological profile of your prisoner. The results are fascinating. How so? Standard fear responses are virtually absent. Stress hormone production is elevated but controlled. Most interesting is his neural activity pattern. Instead of the panic responses we expected, his brain is showing heightened activity in regions associated with strategic planning and pattern recognition. Korvac studied the readouts with growing unease. You are saying he's not afraid? Oh, he's afraid. But he's processing that fear as tactical information rather than allowing it to impair his judgment. It's as if human evolution has optimized their species for functioning under extreme stress. That's impossible. Fear is a survival mechanism. It's supposed to trigger flight or defensive behaviors. Not in humans, apparently. In this specimen, fear seems to enhance rather than degrade cognitive performance. Watch this. Yeshmore activated a series of displays showing Rivera's cell from multiple angles. The human had moved to the far corner and was now working on something with intense concentration. His hands moved with practiced precision, assembling what looked like a small device from components he'd somehow extracted from the cell's basic fixtures. Where did he get those materials? Korvac demanded. That's the remarkable part. He's been systematically dismantling non-essential systems. The air recycling grate, the waste disposal mechanism, even threads from his own clothing. He's creating something, though our sensors can't determine exactly what. Cut the power to his cell. Stop whatever he's doing. I'm afraid that's not advisable, Captain. Interrupting this behavior might trigger unpredictable responses. It's better to observe and learn. Korvac wanted to argue, but his orders were clear. The Science Directorate had priority in all matters relating to human research. Still, every instinct honed by decades of military service was telling him this was a mistake. How long until your evaluation is complete? Several more hours at minimum. We are planning to introduce controlled stressors to observe his adaptive responses. The data we collect here could revolutionize our understanding of human combat effectiveness. As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in pulsing red as automated systems announced an incoming attack. All personnel to combat stations. Multiple vessels approaching at high velocity. Configuration unknown. Korvac was already moving toward the command center when his communicator crackled to life. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Grix in sensor control. We have got 12 ships inbound, human configuration, but they're moving too fast for standard vessels. Estimated arrival in 6 minutes. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated the human fleet was completely destroyed. Sir, these aren't military vessels. The energy signatures suggest they are modified civilian craft. Freighters, passenger ships, even what looks like a mining vessel. But they are armed and moving in coordinated attack formation." Korvac reached the command center as the main tactical display came online. The approaching ships were indeed a ragtag collection of civilian vessels, but their flight patterns showed military precision. Someone with serious combat experience was coordinating this attack. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead vessel. Reported communications, Officer Vex." On screen, the display flickered, revealing the face of a human woman in her 40s, her graying hair pulled back in a tight military bun. Her eyes held the same calculating coldness Korvac had seen in the young cadet's gaze. "This is Commander Lisa Park of the Human Liberation Fleet. You have one of our people. Return him unharmed, and we will make your deaths quick." "Commander Park, I am Captain Korvac of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and I will consider allowing your civilians to live." Park's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Captain, you have made 2 critical errors. First, you assumed these are civilian vessels. Second, you assumed we came here to negotiate." The transmission cut just as proximity alarms began screaming throughout the station. "Sir, they're not slowing down," Grix reported, his voice cracking with stress. "They are on a collision course. All weapons, open fire. Target their engines. Disable them before they can ram us." Varick Station's defensive batteries opened up with streams of plasma and particle beam fire. The approaching human ships scattered into evasive patterns that seemed impossible for vessels of their size and configuration. They weaved through the defensive fire like dancers, their pilots displaying skills that suggested extensive combat experience. "They are not trying to ram us," Korvac realized with growing horror. "They're using the attack run as cover for something else." That's when the first explosions began rocking the station's lower levels. The explosions weren't coming from outside the station. They were coming from within. Internal detonations on levels 12 through 15, Ensign Krex reported, his voice rising an octave with panic. "Hull breaches in sections 7, 9, and 14. Emergency containment protocols are failing." Captain Korvac felt his blood turn to ice water. "How is that possible? Those areas are supposed to be secured." "Sir, the human ships aren't firing on us," Lieutenant Thresh announced from the weapons control station. "They're just flying around us in formation, like they are waiting for something." On the main tactical display, the 12 human vessels had taken up positions around Varick Station, maintaining just enough distance to stay out of range of the heavier defensive weapons while their smaller craft darted between the station's gun emplacements like annoying insects. "Captain, we are receiving damage reports from all sections," Communications Officer Vex called out. "The explosions appear to be targeting specific systems. Life support, artificial gravity, and most importantly, the detention center's power grid." The realization hit Korvac like a plasma bolt to the chest. The prisoner. They are not here to rescue him. They are here to let him rescue himself. He spun toward the security station. "Give me a visual on detention cell 7 now." The screen flickered to life, showing Rivera's cell. The human was no longer visible in the main chamber, but smoke was pouring from what looked like a hole blown in the rear wall. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through the haze, and sparks flew from damaged electrical systems. "He's gone," Thresh whispered. "But how? Those walls are meter-thick durasteel." "Sir, we are getting reports of armed humans moving through the lower levels," Krex announced. "Security teams are engaging, but they're taking heavy casualties." Korvac's mind raced. The coordinated timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Somehow, the human rescue force had communicated with their prisoner and coordinated a simultaneous breakout from inside and outside the station. All security teams converge on detention level. Seal off every access corridor. I want that human found and neutralized. But even as he gave the orders, Korvac knew they were already too late. The explosions had been too precise, too targeted. This wasn't a desperate rescue attempt. It was a carefully orchestrated military operation planned by someone who understood exactly how Hegemony facilities operated 0.3 levels below. Marcus Rivera crawled through the maintenance shaft he'd accessed after blowing through his cell wall. The improvised explosive device he'd constructed from cell components had worked perfectly, creating just enough force to breach the weakened section of wall he'd identified during his systematic examination. His academy instructors would have been proud. Chemical Engineering 101. Even the most basic cleaning supplies could be weaponized if you understood molecular composition and reaction dynamics. The cell's waste disposal system had provided everything he needed. That Rivera's earpiece crackled with static before Commander Park's voice came through clearly. "Mockingbird, this is Mother Hen. What's your status?" "Cage is open, Mother Hen. Moving to secondary objectives." "Understood. We have got multiple hostiles converging on your position. Suggest you accelerate the timeline." Rivera allowed himself a grim smile as he reached the end of the maintenance shaft. The grate opened into a storage bay filled with maintenance equipment and spare parts. More importantly, it was directly adjacent to the station's main armory. "Copy that. Beginning Phase 2. What the Hegemony forces didn't understand about human military doctrine was the concept of mission redundancy. Every human operation included multiple backup plans, contingency protocols, and alternative objectives. The rescue wasn't just about getting Rivera out alive. It was about making sure the Hegemony paid a price for capturing him in the first place. Rivera had spent his time in captivity doing more than just planning his escape. He'd been memorizing the station's layout, identifying critical systems, and calculating exactly how much damage one person could inflict if they knew where to strike. The armory's electronic lock was sophisticated by Hegemony standards, but human encryption technology had always been more advanced. Rivera's wrist computer, disguised as a simple chronometer, interfaced with the lock's control system and began running decryption algorithms his instructors had taught him at the academy. "Mockingbird, we are reading massive troop movement toward your last known position," Park's voice warned. "Estimat forti plus hostile en route." "Understood. They're about to have bigger problems to worry about." The armory door slid open with a soft hiss. Rivera stepped inside and felt his heart rate increase at the sight of enough military hardware to outfit a small army. Plasma rifles, explosive charges, personal shield generators, and most importantly, a full tactical combat suit designed for Valdorian physiology. The IT would be too large for him, but the power core and defensive systems would still function. Rivera began stripping out of his prison uniform and climbing into the oversized armor when alarms began blaring throughout the station. "All personnel, alert status read. Prisoner has escaped detention. Armed and extremely dangerous. Shoot to kill authorized." Rivera activated the suit's communication system and patched into the station's internal network. What he found there made him smile with genuine satisfaction. The Hegemony had made the classic mistake of underestimating human technological capabilities. Their computer security was designed to prevent sophisticated AI, intrusion, or coordinated cyber attacks from military vessels. It was completely unprepared for a single human with academy-level training in electronic warfare. Within minutes, Rivera had gained access to the station's environmental controls, security systems, and most critically, the automated defense grid. "Mother Hen, this is Mockingbird. I'm in their system, ready to make some noise." "Copy that. All units, prepare for fireworks." Rivera's fingers flew over the control interface as he began systematically shutting down life support to non-essential areas while simultaneously overloading power conduits in strategic locations. The goal wasn't to destroy the station outright. That would be wasteful. The goal was to create enough chaos to allow the rescue fleet to extract him while gathering as much intelligence as possible. But first, he had some personal business to attend to. The tactical display showed Captain Korvac and his command staff in the main control center, trying desperately to coordinate a response to the multiple crises erupting throughout their facility. Rivera smiled as he activated the internal communication system. Captain Korvac, this is Cadet Marcus Rivera. Thank you for the hospitality, but I think it's time I checked out. The response was immediate and predictably furious. Surrender immediately, human, or we will start executing the civilian prisoners we captured from Kepler Colony. Rivera's blood turned cold. He hadn't known about other prisoners. The intelligence briefing had mentioned only him. This changed everything. Where are they? He demanded. Level 18, Detention Block B, 23 humans, including children. Surrender now, or they die. Rivera closed his eyes and ran through tactical calculations. Level 18 was on the opposite side of the station from his current position. Getting there would require fighting through dozens of security personnel, and even then, extracting that many prisoners would be nearly impossible with the current rescue force, unless he changed the parameters of the mission entirely. Mother Hen, we have a problem. He quickly briefed Commander Park on the hostage situation while simultaneously accessing the station's prisoner database. 23 names appeared on his screen, including 6 children between the ages of 8 and 14. Mockingbird, extraction of that many prisoners wasn't part of the mission profile. We don't have the capacity. Then we make capacity, Rivera replied grimly. I'm uploading the station's complete technical specifications to your vessels. You will see what I see. What he saw was a converted mining platform with massive cargo holds and industrial equipment still functioning in the lower levels. The original mining operations had required enormous transport capacity for moving raw materials. That same capacity could be repurposed for moving people. Mockingbird, that's completely insane. You're talking about hijacking an entire space station. Negative, Mother Hen. I'm talking about liberating one. The Hegemony converted this facility from a mining operation, which means the original power systems and propulsion controls are still intact. They just assumed no one would be crazy enough to try flying it. Rivera was already moving, the oversized tactical suits, servo motors whining as he ran through corridors toward the engineering section. His academy training in industrial systems was about to get the ultimate field test. All units, you heard the man. Park's voice came over the communication network. Prepare for the most ridiculous rescue operation in human history. We're stealing a space station. The next 30 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Rivera fought his way through increasingly desperate security forces while the rescue fleet began systematically disabling the station's external weapons. His access to the internal systems allowed him to coordinate their attacks, opening blast doors at crucial moments and shutting down defensive systems just as human fighters swept past. But the real breakthrough came when he reached the engineering section and discovered that the Hegemony hadn't just converted the mining platform. They'd built an entire research facility around the original structure. The massive industrial equipment used for asteroid processing was still there, hidden beneath layers of scientific equipment and administrative offices. Mother Hen, I have got good news and bad news. Give me the good news first, Mockingbird. The good news is that this station has enough industrial capacity to process entire asteroids. The bad news is that most of that equipment is currently being used to power weapons systems that are trying to kill you. Rivera's hands flew over the engineering controls as he began the delicate process of rerouting power from weapons to propulsion systems. The original mining platform had been designed to move under its own power between asteroid fields. That capability had been dormant for years, but the hardware was still functional. Mockingbird, whatever you are doing is working. Their fire rate just dropped by 60%. That's just the beginning. Stand by for main event. Rivera activated the station's original navigation systems and felt a deep vibration run through the deck plates as massive engines that hadn't fired in decades roared to life. Varick's station shuddered and began to move. Holy hell! Mockingbird, did you just steal a space station? Affirmative, Mother Hen. And we are taking it home. The next few hours were a masterclass in improvised tactics and creative engineering. Rivera systematically shut down all non-essential systems while redirecting every available joule of power to the propulsion grid. The rescue fleet formed a protective escort as the hijacked station began accelerating away from Hegemony territory. But the most satisfying moment came when Rivera finally reached Detention Block B and found the 23 human prisoners exactly where Captain Korvac had said they would be. The children looked up at him with wide eyes as he appeared in the doorway, wearing an oversized alien combat suit, his face visible through the helmet's transparent faceplate. "Are you here to rescue us?" asked a little girl with pigtails and a dirt-stained dress. "That's the plan," Rivera replied, kneeling down to her level. "But first, we need to make sure the bad guys can't follow us home." What followed was the systematic dismantling of every piece of useful technology on the station. The research equipment, computer databases, weapon systems, and most importantly, all the data the Hegemony had been collecting about human prisoners. Rivera made sure it was either destroyed or downloaded to the rescue fleet's computers that by the time they reached the edge of human territory, Varick Station had been stripped of everything valuable and converted into a refugee transport carrying not just the 23 prisoners, but also dozens of human civilians the rescue fleet had picked up from other facilities along the way. Commander Park's voice came over the communication system as they approached the coordinates where the human refugee fleet was waiting. "Mockingbird, I have to ask, how did you know this would work?" Rivera looked out through the station's main observation deck at the assembled human ships, converted civilian vessels, military remnants, and now a stolen alien space station, all working together to keep humanity alive in a hostile galaxy. "Commander, the Hegemony made the same mistake everyone makes when fighting humans. They assumed we'd follow their rules, use their tactics, think inside their parameters. But humans don't work that way. We adapt, we improvise, and most importantly, we never accept that a situation is impossible." He paused, watching as docking tubes extended from the refugee ships to begin transferring the rescued prisoners. "Besides, they shot me and locked me in a cage. Did they really think I was just going to sit there and wait to be rescued?" Park's laughter came through the speakers, followed by the voices of dozens of other humans as word of the successful operation spread through the fleet. For the first time in months, there was hope in those voices. Not just survival, but the possibility of actually winning this war. Rivera smiled as he watched the children from Detention Block B press their faces against the observation windows, staring in wonder at the stars that represented their freedom. The Hegemony had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that capturing one human cadet would give them insight into human psychology and tactics. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed most: proof that no prison could hold them, no enemy could break them, and no situation was truly hopeless as long as humans were willing to think outside the box. The war was far from over, but today, humanity had sent a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. They had shot the human cadet, locked him up, and tried to break him down. 23 seconds after his rescue began, Marcus Rivera had walked out covered in alien blood, carrying their severed hopes of victory in his hands. And humanity was just getting started.